the best homeschooling curriculum or style for you is the one that you're going to use. Now, you can still follow this kind of idea of tapping into their strengths, using their interests to motivate them. You know what your kids are good at. So you want to do more things that really showcase those things you know your kids like shine in.
Welcome to the Homeschool Perspective, where seasoned homeschooling moms share tips, insights, and resources to empower your homeschool journey. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Homeschool Perspective. Today, we have our very first guest. We have Colleen Kessler here with us today. Colleen is one of my good friends, and she is a highly respected author, speaker, and the creator of the Learners Lab, which is an incredible community. I am in there. It is wonderful. So that is an incredible community dedicated to bright and quirky kids, which yes, I have.
Same.
Yes. So Colleen has a passion for nurturing the unique strengths and interests of children. She has become a beacon of inspiration for many families. We are so excited for her latest book, which we've gotten an early copy of and been able to read through. It is so good. The book is The Homeschool Advantage, which will be released later this summer. So we've already pre-ordered it. And like I said, we got a little early advance of it. And we can't wait to dive into the insights that it brings with homeschooling and a focus on leveraging your children's strengths and passions. But today we get to dive into Colleen's perspective. So please join me in welcoming the wonderful Colleen Kessler to the Homeschool Perspective. Welcome, Colleen. So good to have you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm so excited. This is fun to be able to talk to so many people at once, but a little disconcerting too. So I hopefully won't talk over anybody or...
It is always a challenge. We have that with each other, doing a podcast with three co-hosts, and then so we'll just see how it goes. We're gonna roll with it today.
And when you have four passionate people, it's just gonna happen.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Absolutely.
We will make it work. So, Colleen, I would love for our audience to get to know you a little bit better before we jump into the conversation. Can you share with us a little bit about how your family came to homeschooling and just a little bit about you and just anything else that you want to share just as we dive in today?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So I'm Colleen Kessler. As Rachel said, I'm the founder of Raising Lifelong Learners, a podcast and a website. And I've written a bunch of books with a new one coming out soon, like Rachel said. And I actually started out in education. I am a gifted specialist. I taught third grade for a while, and then I taught gifted and twice exceptional children in the school system. I didn't anticipate originally homeschooling. I first left teaching to freelance write full-time because I was already writing books and articles for teachers, parents, and kids. And there was a little bit of some health issues between my first and my second. And so, you know how y'all bargain when you're pregnant and you're looking for a healthy baby. I was like, if I could just have more children, if this all works out, I'm going to find a way to stay home with them. And so I left teaching to be home with my kids and to be home after school and write during the day. And, there's always somebody up there laughing at your plans, right? I think it was like paving the way for what was to come. So my son started kindergarten and struggled. He was described as an extreme thinker in preschool, and his preschool teacher expressed some concerns about what it was going to be like when he got to the classroom. Mm-hmm. And kind of like a case of the shoemaker's kids going shoeless. He was missed. His giftedness and twice exceptionalities were missed by the gifted specialist living with him. And we took him to all sorts of psychologists and doctors to try to figure out why he couldn't sit still and why he kept interrupting people and why his behavior was spiraling out of control in the classroom and why he was just not enjoying learning anymore, to find out that he was profoundly gifted, had some ADHD, impulsivity issues, and some anxiety. And so kind of actually kicking and screaming a little bit, we pulled him out of school in the middle of first grade and decided then we were going to take homeschooling kid by kid, year by year, and just see what happened. At the time, I had a first grader, a preschooler, and a nursing baby. It was a lot. It was
quite a time.
Yeah, especially for someone who is used to being in the classroom and having kids listen to her. And, there's in education, there's a lot of like classroom management involved in the education of teachers and not just the day-to-day teaching. And so it's different when you're at home because your kids don't listen to you like they do a classroom teacher. And then you had, the baby that needed to be nursed and the toddler or preschooler that like was throwing a temper tantrum. And so it was a different world. It was a big learning curve. But he started regaining his love of learning and his questions started coming back. And we were having fun together. My 3-year-old at the time did go to preschool. And what I was realizing was it was a lot to juggle my own schedule and trying to manage the homeschooling and then manage somebody else's schedule and getting her to preschool on time and then having to be back from adventures that we were going on because we had to pick her up. And so when she was ready for kindergarten, we decided to try her in kindergarten or in homeschooling too. Mm-hmm. And none of my other children, I have 4, none of them have been to a regular school. Since I pulled Trevor out in first grade. And so we're in our 15th year of homeschooling. I have 4 children now. I graduated one. He's 21. And as we are recording
Congratulations.
I know, it's so exciting. I can tell you there is light at the end of the tunnel. It does work no matter how different things are because things change throughout your years of homeschooling. My homeschool now looks very different than that first year when I took him out. Mm-hmm. And he is currently he's out of state recording for a homeschooling conference that a person that he met through an event I did years ago called him up to do the videography for a conference that she was putting on in North Carolina. So we live in Ohio. Very so cool. She flew him out and he's a professional videographer working there. I have a 16-year-old who is a rising senior. She'll be graduating next year. So we're working on the college stuff for her. And then I have an almost 15-year-old, she'll be 15 next month, and an 11-year-old. So I have a ways to go, but it's fun.
Yeah. And all of your kids are just great human beings. So when you can talk to people who have like raised their kids like or homeschooled their kids throughout and have graduated some of them. I know like Lisa is in the same boat. She's graduated some of them and they're like real, they're interesting and they're cool people. Like those of us like me and Allie who still have a ways to go with all of our kids, it's inspiring to see, those awesome adults that have been raised through homeschooling. So what would you say? I know you said it changed over the years, but what would you say like your homeschool like style or like how has it changed? Like what is the metamorphosis of Colleen Kessler's homeschool style?
Oh my gosh, so many.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Many iterations.
Actually, totally. And I think that if there's, I'll tell you, but I think that the message really is for anybody listening, what you're doing today is not what you're going to be doing tomorrow. And that's okay. Like, don't hold everything that you do when you're homeschooling loosely because things change as your kids change and as your life circumstances change. So in the beginning, we were really floundering. We knew no other homeschoolers. It was really an under duress decision. I knew about homeschooling. I'd actually looked into it. I was following different websites and blogs at the time and thought that it would be really cool, but just dismissed it as impractical for our lifestyle and for our area. And so when we did have an option to send our son to a gifted school, but it was 45 minutes away one way. And with a preschooler and a nursing baby, I knew I wasn't going to make a 90-minute round trip twice a day in the winter in Ohio. And so we just really didn't have any options. And so in the beginning, we pulled him out mid-year. And in the beginning, it was like him sitting in my office. I was working from home at the time, freelancing. And I had a babysitter that came 15 hours a week to watch the little two. And so when she was here, she was not super supportive of homeschooling. She had kids that went to the same school I pulled my son out of and kind of took it as a personal attack. Like, if the school's good enough for my kids, why isn't it good enough for yours? And so I hid him away with me while she was there with the little two. And he was at his desk working on the workbooks that we had brought home from his desk. And it was really a disaster because I was doing this, I was replicating the system that wasn't working for him that I had pulled him out of. And so Not too long into that year, we realized that just was not his style. Like, sitting and doing workbooks was the antithesis of what he needed. He needed to explore, follow his interests. He needed to have buy-in to the different things that he did. And it's pretty steeped in gifted research anyway. Like, gifted kids in particular need to understand why they're doing things, want to do things, and then they're more motivated and more bought in. And so, like, I knew that, but putting it into practice, and coming from an education background, where
that's so hard. I was the same way. Yeah.
Right? Because you're used to designing the lesson plans and having the kids follow it. And it's very difficult to break away from that. My husband still is a teacher today. And so that's been a constant battle throughout our life. In fact, if you look like at a map of our homeschooling for the last 15 years, anytime we had trouble, anytime we've struggled, it's because I've fallen back onto like a more textbook based approach. So starting out, it was very much me trying to find what they needed to learn and give them ways to learn it. And then as I started relaxing more and as the kids started getting older, because now, you have a toddler and a preschooler or an early elementary kid, and then one getting closer to middle school years, you're trying to find all different things to pull in, but knowing that, you can't do individual lessons to everybody all at once. And so we started exploring our world. We started going to more museums, tapping into things that the kids were interested in. Way back when lap books were all the rage. And we pulled out some lap booking, like freebie sites and things. What I found was that was a good approach for somebody like my son, who's very distractible, because they were basically research reports, but in little bite-sized. And so we did that for a long time. In fact, my 16-year-old just pulled out some of her old lap books from when she was itty bitty to show her boyfriend, who goes to a traditional school, a college prep school, actually. And they were talking about how much research she actually did as an elementary school kid to form these things that she thought was like just scrapbooking. It was just like fun little books. And so we did a lot of that. So we did unit studies, and I was still driving a lot of the topics, but then I started asking the kids more and more about what they were interested in. I started watching what they were doing. And again, like, as you have more kids, it gets harder and harder to like buy a box of curriculum for each one. Or if you've got neurodivergent kids in particular, you just can't buy a box of curriculum because they're all over the place in, grade levels. And so we would pick and choose. So this is what I do now. Like, this is from the sitting down with the workbooks to exploring all sorts of unit studies when they were little and going on lots of field trips, to now having my youngest entering 6th grade. Each year, we talk about what they want to learn, and I try to incorporate some of those interests through the things that we choose to do together, whether that's field trips or unit studies. And then I figure out, I like to tell people to be a student of their child, jot down notes, reflect on what they're good at, what they're interested in, what they're gravitating towards, what you're noticing they're struggling with. One of my kids right now in particular struggles with stamina. Like, he has all the stamina in the world when it comes to Minecraft or Roblox, but
not writing.
Right. Not writing.
Not writing.
Reading, not anything.
Do we have the same kid?
I think that so many people listening have the same 11, 12-year-old boy.
Yep.
So one of the things that I've done with him is he has a workbook every, quarter that he's got to get through. Sometimes it's a geography workbook. Sometimes it's a handwriting workbook. Sometimes it's language arts and grammar. But the idea isn't that these are skills that he can't pick up elsewhere. The idea is that sitting down, doing 2 pages a day is a stamina builder. It's also a discipline builder. Like, there's going to be a point where he's in a class that, he doesn't want to do what they're telling him to do, but he's going to have to do it. My 16-year-old and I have been experiencing that this summer. She's taking a college class because we realized, as we're starting to approach, the college applications, much of what she's done has been graded by someone like me or another homeschool mom through a co-op. And she's super capable. She's one of the brightest, most articulate kids that you'll ever meet. And she thinks, you talk about imposter syndrome. It starts early when you are very bright. She thinks that she's not as smart as she actually is. So part of the reason for doing a college class is to show her that actually you are. And also to show the transcript that she can still get an A from somebody other than me.
I love that.
And so she's doing an intro to entrepreneurship class, and it's a great class. It's not one she's probably ever going to use because she doesn't want to be like a regular type entrepreneur, but she'll use the marketing. She wants to go into performing arts, so she's going to have to market herself.
Oh, definitely.
So some of the lessons are really good, but what she's discovering and what she's realizing she loathes is that it really is just a rubric-based check-the-box class. If you do everything on the rubric, you'll get full points. If you miss one thing, you'll get points knocked off. So she complains about it each week, but she's got 100% credit-wise in the class 3 weeks in because she
figured out the system.
Yeah. You got to learn the system. You have to figure out like each teacher, each professor, you have to play the game. It is. And I remember when I was in school figuring out the game too. And I was like, oh, it was a huge light bulb moment. And so awesome that she's getting this at 16 where she can really start to like, learn, before she even goes to college. So good. I love how it's really good to do like with when they're little, like a workbook or two when they're older, like this kind of class, because what she's also seeing, she's by far the youngest in this class. And she's seeing other people post on the Blackboard where you're turning it in. And she's like, I can't believe a 23-year-old wrote that. Like it doesn't take a lot of extra time to put good paragraph structure together. And there's so many resources. Like she's using the paid version of Grammarly because she's using it anyway. She would have been using it anyway, but her professor wrote in there to the students. Like I expect everybody to have perfect grammar and spelling because there are tools. She's like, I use Grammarly, the professor did. So she and Molly resonated together because they're using the same tool. And Molly's like, if you have access to these tools that literally will rewrite it for you as it points out your grammatical mistakes, how can you still choose to turn something in at 23 years old that isn't checking the boxes? So she's like, her mind is blown at how easy it is to follow the directions and what you can do if you just care a little bit. And I think that's the best thing that homeschooling's done for any of my kids. Like if you just put a little bit of effort in, you blow people away because so many people are not putting in the minimal effort. Yeah. That's the trick.
That. It's I feel like this is such a good segue to our hot topic for today too, because what we wanted to talk about, and I think there's probably parents already listening and thinking about this, the idea of moving to or making space for a strengths-based approach, giving them space to pursue their passions. It's so incredible. And it provides such a rich and robust education. But there are people who second guess that and wonder, like, can you get a complete and full and sound education if you are hyper-focused or making the decisions about your homeschooling based solely on your child's strengths and passions? I'm really interested, especially with the experience you just shared, I'm really interested to hear what you think about that. Because I'm sure you've heard it from parents too. There's like, people want to go in this direction. And then there's like an internal squeezing of the brakes, right? Of like, oh no. So I'd love to hear from you. What do you say to that?
Yeah, especially as they get older, right? When we get to middle school, every parent who's homeschooling is like, oh my gosh, it's getting more and more real. I have to make sure that the classes can be tracked as, transcriptable.
Do they do like, and you're doing like, okay, you can explore your passions and interests over here, but we're also doing this serious book work because now we're in 7th grade and it's real. So they try to do both and it just burn themselves and their kids out. Yeah.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Allie, yeah, you absolutely can. And here's the thing, like we're going to separate out the strength-based and the passion kind of interest-driven for a second here. Because first, let's tackle like the strengths. The current model of education, it's so outdated in so many ways. And there's research that supports this. And there are other countries that have already caught on to this. And the United States just is behind.
Slow.
But
and countries we look to that people say, hey, look at what they're doing. And it's like, but why?
Yes, exactly. And so we are here especially, but even as parents who are homeschooling their kids, because the natural inclination, right, is to fix what's broken and to help your kids have like the best start. So our natural inclination is to focus on deficits, to shore them up before they leave us, right? And that's what education does. It's a deficit-based approach. Like, where are they struggling? Let's hyper focus on those. So then the result when we focus on a deficit-based approach is that the kids are being given the message constantly that they're failing in all these areas and they're broken in all these ways and they need to fix these problems or they're not going to be successful adults. But if we flip the script, and research supports this, and we focus on the things that they are already good at, we have a natural window into or opening to bring their deficits in based on those strengths. There's a quote, I use it in the book and I can't remember who said it. It was a Zen person, one of those like philosophical writers, just about like if my kid was gifted in tennis and failing in math, I would pay for more tennis lessons. And the reason being. Thank you. Yes, I knew it was somebody like that was at the tip of my tongue.
I also just read the book, so I get a bonus there. Okay. I just read it. That's why
you get bonus stars. But it's really the truth, because the more and more they feel good about themselves, the more confident they are to tackle those weaknesses. And so when we give them more opportunities to hone in on their strengths, they're going to pull up their weaknesses anyway. So I'll give you a practical example, because homeschool moms are like, okay, but they have to get to a certain level of math to be, eligible for school. And my kid hates math I'm not saying give up math. Though that said, one of my kids did give up math for 3 years. And guess what? She's doing just fine and will be just fine getting into school. But she gave it up and dove deeper into some of her other things because it was becoming this constant like beating over the head and constant tears. And she wasn't not doing math. She was, halving and doubling and tripling recipes. And
she was just doing it different.
Yeah, she was figuring out, what the discount was on the shirt she wanted to buy at the mall. And so she was still doing it. And she was relying on her calculator a little bit more and she wasn't doing the workbooks. But when we got back to the workbooks, she realized how much she had already just picked up naturally and was flying through a couple grade levels at a time. So you can take that approach where you give it up for a little while. And that's what I felt for that particular kid I needed to do. Whereas my youngest was not allowed to stop writing. He's still writing a little bit every day. Some of those days it was like just a journal entry or tell me what you did or what your favorite part of the day was. But he was still writing because I knew if I had let him never write again or take a break, he wouldn't come back to it. The other, you have to look at your kids too. But when we focus on their strengths, we build up their confidence. We build up their resilience, which is their ability to bounce back when something is hard. We build up their self-worth, and they're able to do things that are harder because they feel more confident about themselves. But then let's talk about like passions and interests, because they are separate.
They are different.
And so I'll give you an example. Like personally, I am very good. I'm a good writer. I'm a good speaker. I always have been. Those were my strengths when I was little. I was nerdy and on the speech and debate team in college. And when I left college, I spoke at education conferences. When I started freelance writing, left teaching and started freelance writing, I wrote at freelance conferences. I wrote some children's books and spoke at children's writers conferences. Now I'm homeschooling and I'm writing about parenting and homeschooling. And I speak at parenting conferences and homeschooling conferences. My strengths are the same: writing, reading, linguistics, speaking. My interests have changed as I've grown and evolved. And so I've used those strengths in different ways, through education, through writing, through talking to parents. And so our kids' strengths are what they are, but they're going to use them in different ways based on their interests. My daughter is a very articulate person. Like I said before, she's really intuitive when it comes to people and emotions. She's good at expressing feelings and speaking, and she's a tremendous writer. She loves theater. She loves singing. She loves performing. So her strengths, that linguistic ability, the intuitiveness, allows her to be very empathetic and take on characterization in a way that makes her believable on stage and through the camera. And
That's
so
awesome.
her strengths and interests they have combined to allow her to do more with performing arts. But if she decides she doesn't want to do performing arts someday, those strengths will still follow her into other. She could speak about it. She could teach. She could do other things. She could work with special needs kids because, she's done a little bit of that. And that empathy and intuitiveness can be applied in different ways. So when we look at the difference between the strengths and the interests, we're not saying like, your kid is interested in theater now, so that's what they're going to always do. And all of the stuff that you give them should center around theater. What we're saying is like their strengths are writing and reading and speaking about the things that they're doing. So if their weaknesses are math or like critical thinking, see how you can apply that through the speaking, through the conversations, through the interactions with people. And you can do that by baking for people, by calculating how much the homeless shelter needs in their current fundraiser and what you can do at home to earn money for it and apply it that way. So you can pull in their weaknesses through their strengths in a way that's going to be really applicable to who they are. And you can do this all throughout their education. It sounds super easy when they're little because, it doesn't count as much. But if you do it as they're older, now you've got, let's take that homeless shelter example. You've got some research. You've got the public speaking. So you've got like English language arts, things that they're benchmarks that they're meeting. Mm-hmm. You've got the math and the calculation, and this is real world math. So maybe it can be like a consumer math credit or something like that. And then you've got outreach, community service outreach. So you've got the community service hours and things like that. So you can still apply it to a transcript in a real and tangible way and hit multiple areas on a transcript, unlike maybe a high schooler who's just taking consumer math.
Right.
In the classroom. So it actually, following a strength-based and or an interest-led approach opens you up to be able to count things as multiple credits at the same time because you're doing it in a more creative way, and your kid's confidence is growing stronger and stronger. So they're going to be able to be more competitive if they want to go to school, or if they want to enter the job force right away, or if they want to do something that, taps into whatever their future career is going to be.
So I
love that. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Rachel.
I was just going to say, I love that. And I feel like I have gotten so much better about doing that and over the years because my kids have kind of forced me to. And I have, with the way that they learn and the quirks and the things that they bring and the interests they have. And I've been able to think really creatively and be able to integrate their life into learning. But I find that that's really not an easy thing to do all the time. You'd have to have a lot of creativity and just openness to trying new things. Can you give us some tips on like how to get to be that creative leader? Because you're just
and flexible.
Yeah, you have to have you have to see the big picture as the homeschooling parent of how this is all fitting together and really, really trust yourself that it is going to fit together in order to take the leap and like skip math for 3 years. You don't just skip math for 3 years without the confidence that they're going to get it some other way and it's going to be okay because they can learn it through life. So do you have any insight on that?
Yeah. So I think that first you have to, like you said, trust yourself, but you also have to trust your kids. And, I know that that's hard too, because they're little people, but, and they're little people, like even 16-year-olds are still little people. And so they don't have all the experience and the exposure to know what they do really, truly need and not need. So you have to trust. There's a lot of trust in there. You also have to hold your plans loosely, but then you also have to be realistic and know that, there may be some things that you are not comfortable with depending on the kid or just depending on you, and be okay with that. So, one of the strategies that I use, especially for really all of my kids, except for that one particular one with that math example, we have a list of must-dos every day, and those are really the things that I need them to do. So I feel like I did my job. If we don't do anything else, or nothing else looks like they're learning to someone outside our home, they're still getting some stuff. So for most of my kids, and for all of them right now, it's a little bit of math, a little bit of reading, a little bit of writing every single day. And that can look different depending on who the kid is and what we're in the middle of. My youngest does multiple lessons of math a day because they take him like 5 minutes, and he's already a year ahead in math. And he loves it, and he checks boxes and feels accomplished. And I want him to accelerate through because he's capable of it. He likes it right now. If he starts to be like reticent towards it, I would bring that back down to 1 lesson a day, but he's not right now. It's no big deal for him. And so if he gets through math more quickly, then when he does get to high school, he could explore more coding or things like that, whatever he's interested in, which was the approach that we did with my oldest. He did not do any math once he got to high school because he had already done pre-calculus in middle school because he just accelerated himself. It was fun. And then so all of high school was deep dives into videography and photography and editing and things like that. But he had already gotten all of his work done by the end of middle school. And so I'll come back to that in a second. But then the others, the specific must-dos are there. And then the rest of it is knowing how to apply what they're doing to class descriptions. I mean, so Andrew Pudawa, the founder of IEW and an icon in the homeschooling world, said at a conference I was at once that you do what you need or you do what you want and you write what you need. And that just stuck with me because it was so simple, but so profound. It reminded me that, that we really do have flexibility. And so you can look at the things that the kids are already doing, and you can expand on some of those. If you notice that they're, playing a lot of video games or whatever, you can expand on some of those concepts by asking them to write stories about the video characters, or you could read books and put audiobooks in so you're getting more literature in. And you don't have to touch on everything all the time. I was talking to somebody recently whose kids are in elementary school and entering middle school, and they spent several years not really doing much history or social studies at all in the last couple of years. And so if you're just talking about things that are, coming up in your kids' lives, you're probably touching on more than than you think you are anyway. So just trust that that's going to come, and then fill it in the areas that you need. And then remember that Andrew Pudawa quote, because I really do think that he's right. You can do the things that you want to do and your kids are interested. And then when you look back at them, you can creatively write what you need for the transcript based on all those things that, you were already doing. And so I love that. The other thing that I would suggest is start now, keep a journal. Reflect on the things that you're doing, even if you only write an entry in there once a week. That kind of unlocked for me all of the things that we were doing that I didn't think of as school or as learning. How much learning my kids were actually doing in a day when I started writing down, just jotting down where we went, what we did, who they talked to, what kinds of things they were doing imaginatively, what kinds of things they were doing, on their own. And
the questions they're asking.
The questions they're asking, the things that they're exploring, the books they're choosing in the library, the stuff, like some of the things that they say, I'm like blown away. Where did you even hear that? And then they'll tell me, oh, I was bored, so I was watching this Storm Chasers video and he was talking about this. So then I looked it up because I didn't know what that was. And here he basically just did his own unit study on, tornadoes because he didn't understand one thing. So if you just reflect on that, they're learning more and they're retaining it, right? Because if you're learning it because the textbook says to learn it in that order, it's not, it doesn't have meaning, but your kids are going to remember more of what they're discovering based on the things that they're interested in. One thing I will say, because this came up in a conversation I was having with a friend of mine. You don't have to do all of this and in a way that costs you a lot of money and costs you a lot of time. And you don't have to cater to every single person individually. Like, you don't have to have 6 unit studies going on if you have 6 kids.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
okay to say, Trevor's interested in this right now, so we're going to study this. And then Logan, you get
As
to
a
choose
family.
the next thing. And
Mhm.
so, that might be like your time together, and you're doing it in a bunch of different ways, and you're tapping into a bunch of different topics. And then they're going off on their own to do more drawing or do more videography or
Of
do
whatever
more,
they're interested in.
Yeah.
And to just
So
explore it on their own without the pressure of it being even part of the
Yeah.
homeschool day. Because,
Right.
like sometimes our kids are even pressured by that as,
Yeah.
just like, oh, I got to learn. Now I have to learn it for mom. Whereas they were perfectly content learning it. I know I've done that with my kids before, where I've just noticed, like you were saying, like notice what they're interested in, take a note of it. I can journal it down. I can write it down, but I don't tell them that I'm counting this as part of, like this was definitely a learning day, like my kids, I just not caught, but I just saw that they were watching a documentary on Atlantis, and he was telling me about the volcano of Santorini and how like the shock waves were felt all throughout Egypt. And, he's like telling me all this stuff. And I'm like, there's no way. And so he pulls it up, he watches it again. He's like, pauses it. He's like, look, Mom, I want you to see this.
To show me.
To
brought the receipts.
To prove it to me that this really happened. So like, I'm not, I don't know. We already kind of studied that time period of history, and that was a different year. But that doesn't matter because he's interested in it now. So he has that baseline information. He has that baseline interest for it. And I mean, and he's not just watching it like by himself, like all the kids are sitting around watching this documentary with him. And so they're all getting it, and they're all getting a deeper interest in it. So it's like a unit study that was like not planned, but I'm not telling them that,
Well, everything I'm listening to all you're saying, there's been so much richness in this conversation and so many things to take action on. But I feel like there's kind of a fundamental underlying of like, you have to shift how you look at what education is. Like when you're looking at education through the lens of what we've discussed is outdated based on research alone, but is the framework that we are also accustomed to. It looks like education is checking boxes, working through systems, moving at a pace. But I love, and I'm thinking of like just yesterday, like the same as Rachel, my son, we were in the car and he asked us a very profound question. I'm like, where did that come from? And then it led back to, apparently he learned all about the UN and how the UN got started. And he was like, because he was asking us, if you had ultimate power in the world, what's the first thing you would do? And he was talking about how like, if you went and you took Hitler out, that wouldn't actually stop World War II. And like, I mean, it just, all of this stuff. And I'm like, it's because we've made time for space for him to explore all of these things, like you're saying. But I can see how there's even more room to give them that time and give them that direction, because that's how our brains work. So I love it. My brain is just exploding with all kinds of wonderful things from this discussion. I'd love to hear, did anyone else have like a major like brainwave takeaway from this conversation?
Oh, I love it because, we have 8 kids in our family, and they don't really overlap with interests. They all start out wanting to be artists, which is funny because neither my husband nor I are artistic. And then they kind of go from there. And I like what you said about the fact that it's okay to say, well, we're going to study this right now because so-and-so likes this. Because with 8 kids, we can't go in all the directions all the time, right? It's just impossible. I am curious, though, what you'd say to a mom who has a child that's just like, I don't know what I'm interested in, or I don't know what I'm good at. How do you spur them on to even care about that or figure it out?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that comes up a lot because if I ask my 11-year-old right now, like, what do you want to study? He'd be like, I don't know, just do something. And I was talking to another friend the other day who was like, I have tried so hard to follow an interest-based approach. And every time I talk to my son, he's like, I'm not interested in anything. Can you just pick something for me? And I think that that's okay. I think that, okay, so the best homeschooling curriculum or style for you is the one that you're going to use. And it's what works for your family, and everybody's different. Now, you can still follow this kind of idea of tapping into their strengths, using their interests to motivate them. We still want to, what your kids are good at.
Yeah.
When we're talking about, if we're talking about straight academics, if we're talking about interpersonal skills, those kinds of things. So you want to do more things that really showcase those things your kids like shine in. And it doesn't have to be academic. My other daughter is so empathetic, like to a fault. If she has $10, she's going to give you all of it.
Oh.
Because she wants to make you happy.
Mm-hmm.
We had visitors come through here who loved this Elmo doll she had since she was a child, and she gifted it to the 6-year-old before they left. And she asked me, can I please give this to her? She loves it more than I do. And it would mean a lot to her. And of course, go ahead. I mean, we have to watch that she's not too overly giving because she could be easily taken advantage of. But that empathy and that love for other people could come through in so many ways, but she for a long while didn't have any other interests besides, she loved animals, and so she's got a lot of pets. But we tried theater, and it didn't click for her. She did a couple shows, but she didn't love it like her big sister did. We tried some volunteer work. She was volunteering in a preschool class, and she loved working with the preschoolers, but she didn't like being in charge as an assistant teacher and like having to think on the fly if someone was having a problem. She wanted to be told what to do. And so we've tried a lot of different things. And this summer, she was accepted into a teen zoo program, a volunteer program, and she's thriving. She loves it because she's talking to people, which is very difficult. She's got generalized anxiety disorder, but she's talking about animals. So what we've done over the last couple of years is just try to find different things that could tap into that strength of empathy and interpersonal skills. And we've hit on, being in the zoo, talking to other people about animals, where she doesn't have to correct behavior. She's not like, she's just teaching about something she knows. So she's already got the knowledge. She doesn't have to correct things or think on the fly, really, because she's allowed, she's empowered to say, hey, that's a great question. I don't know. Let's look it up. Let me pull out the iPad they've given me. And so exposing them to a lot of different things. So if you've got a kid who's like, Mom, I don't know. I just want to get through school and I don't know what I'm interested in. Focus on the strengths, the things your kid is good at, whether that's, a social and emotional skill, an academic skill, a cognitive skill, whatever. And then give them lots of exposure to different things. So Isaac would watch storm chaser videos. He would watch other weather stuff. He would watch all sorts of math things and stuff like that. So I've bought coding kits over the years when they've been on sale. I don't spend a lot of money on him because he abandons things quickly, but I've shown him Scratch at the MIT site. I've shown him lots of different, coding apps. We've gotten kits to build and code and work with electronics, snap circuits. So I borrow, or I buy inexpensively, or I pass down from other people different things to kind of whet his appetite. And it's really a strategy borrowed from unschoolers, right? Strewing. And I've written about strewing on my site quite a bit, actually. The most important thing, Lisa, to answer your question, is to not tie up your emotions in what you're presenting, because it's going to be okay if your kid isn't in love with it. Like maybe you've presented a unit study and you're like, okay, well, you're not super interested in anything. I thought you might be interested in this. Let's do this unit study. You can follow through on a unit study, but don't put a lot of money and time into anything up front. Because you're trying to expose them, spread the feast, and expose them to lots of different things when they don't have that specific passion or drive. And it's okay. Like my 21-year-old, like I said, is videoing a conference right now. His loves and his passions are photography and videography, but the couple classes he took at the community college on those topics were like a waste of time and money for him, because he'd already self-learned a lot of that stuff. And so he's realized that he needs to learn more about how to promote himself and market a business, because going to school to learn the stuff he's already learned is a waste of time and money. Whereas my daughter wants to be a part of a BFA program. She wants to get a Bachelor of Fine Arts in musical theater and performance, because she loves the training and the learning, and knows that if she actually does want to have a career in performance, she has to train constantly and consistently. So putting her down that path, starting at 8, we just kept doing the next thing and trying the next audition. Whereas my almost 15-year-old, we've given her opportunities to audition. And when she says, I don't really want to, we don't. So you just keep presenting them with opportunities. What they take and run with, you help them run with. What they lose interest in, you're like, okay, well, let's try something different then. And that doesn't mean abandoning everything right away, right? Yeah. So sometimes you have to say, so my youngest did not like theater, but the theater class I signed him up for, sorry, suck it up, buttercup, right? You're going to finish the class and know beyond a shadow of a doubt at the end that you don't want to sign up for another class like that. So it's okay to help them follow through on something too, because sometimes we have to follow through with stuff that sucks, in our own opinions, because it wasn't something that, clicked with us. And we're doing it for the exposure, and there are other lessons we can learn in it. And so that's what I would suggest to those parents. Try a bunch of different things. Share some of your interests with them. Take books out of the library. Go see exhibits that are going on in museums near you. Go watch performances. Go see an orchestra. Go try a couple instruments. Do a lot of different things. So if something starts to stick, you can run with it for a while or forever, depending on how your kids click with it.
I think I'm sorry. I was going to
go ahead, and then I'll say it after.
Okay. I was going to say, like, one thing that I'm hearing you say too is model that for your kids too. Like you said something about that, like go to the museums, go to the things, let your kids see the things that you are interested in too. And take a little bit of, and maybe you don't dive in and it's a full-fledged passion, but if your kids can see you, just like start to develop new interests, and maybe it leads to a passion, like if you are modeling that and you're always learning, which as homeschool moms, we are always learning, developing new passions and becoming interested in things and then all of that type of modeling can really help our kids as they are like, okay, it's okay for me to take a chance on this. Because I think that sometimes for some kids, it's hard for them to see, like, it's okay for me to take a chance. And like you said, you don't want to spend a bunch of money and dive in like, okay, now you're going to be the expert. You're
this is your life.
Yeah. Now. No, you can just dip your toes in. See, I'm dipping my toes in. I'm going to try writing, and I'm going to try art, and I'm going to try to learn a new instrument. I know my mom did that when I was a kid. Like she played the piano, but she picked up the cello as an adult. And, so that was really something that I saw that, okay, it's okay to start new things, and maybe you don't continue with it, but it's a good.
Well, and I love that you pointed this out, but to hold things loosely, because the other thing I think I've seen happen, and even I've been tempted to do, is making this didn't work out into a character flaw. Like this is a character thing that I have to resolve. And that's not what it is. Like being able to dabble is great. I actually love this quote from the Homeschool Advantage from your upcoming book. We can light those sparks in our kids, though, better. We can see little embers of interest when our kiddos find something they enjoy and offer more opportunities to grow in that area. And I just love that visual of, we can take these, like you saw him watching the storm videos, and then it's like, well, what does that branch into? What are some other places we can explore? And then they can turn into embers. And I think your book does a really great job of lighting a path to get from, okay, we're getting started and I've got my brakes on and I'm nervous and I'm going to go, but I'm like this, to a place where you can have this, this joy kind of flowing through and revitalizing that love and that passion and that desire to learn and be curious and ask questions. So I just feel like if anybody is out there listening going, man, that'd be cool, and I don't know how to do it, I really encourage you to get on, and Colleen, you'll have to tell us more about it, but to get on that pre-order list for the Homeschool Advantage, because it does such a great job of taking you from that nervous place to the place where this is not only plausible, but actionable and possible. Can you tell us where can we find more information about your new book? Because I loved it so much.
Thank you so much. It's really Okay, so you guys are like some of the first readers of it. Like there's endorsements and stuff. I know, and there's endorsement. There are people who have read like manuscripts in various forms to be able to tell me if they would endorse the book or not. But you guys were the first to get this preview that is the final kind of book, and so. I just have to say I'm so appreciative because when you put something like this into the world, and this is, I feel, kind of a culmination of the work that I've been doing over the last several years, like decade at least. And so it's really important to me and close to me, and it's a passion project. And so hearing you say that you love it is just very wonderful. So thank you. You can get the book anywhere. So it is published by Wiley Publishers. They've been around for a million years, and so it's in every bookstore. In fact, I know it's on like even Target's website and stuff like that right now. There is a link on my. Yeah, I know. It's super fun. It's available on Amazon right now. And in fact, as we're recording this, it keeps going on sale on Amazon. So as we're recording it, it's currently like $5 off. But during the pre-order period, I know Amazon does that regularly. So check because it will never be more expensive. But right now, and maybe even when you're listening, it might be. So keep checking. You can get it on Amazon. You can go to my site, and there is a big button that says, learn more about the book or find the book. And if you order the book from any website, any retailer, if you go to your local Barnes & Noble and order it ahead of time, there is a place on my website that you can click and enter your name, email address, and your receipt number or order number, depending on, wherever you ordered it from. And it will give you a bunch of pre-order bonuses, and those will be live until the book is out officially, which is July 30th. And so if you're listening to this and you order the book anytime before that, you'll get you'll get some downloads, and you'll also get some links. I'm going to do a live class on just getting started with this, finding your kids' interests and strengths and teasing some of those out. So we're going to do a live class with Q&A. For all people who pre-order the book. And then later, a couple weeks later, we're going to do a follow-up Q&A where you can just ask me anything. You can pre-submit questions, and I'll get through as much of them as I can. And then you're also going to get a planner that I created specifically as a companion for this book. And I have a couple of friends who have donated resources that will help you in some way because one of your kids or more of them will be interested in various things. My friend Pam Barnahill is offering a literature study for The Trumpet of the Swan, which is a great book for this because one of the things I talk about in the book is just neurodiversity and how all of our kids are different, and we have to accommodate for each of our kids' interests and strengths. And in The Trumpet of the Swan, the swan can't make sound, and there's accommodations that, the other characters in the book make for the swan. So it's a really good reminder. It's a great book to talk about those differences and how we can advocate for ourselves and others and make accommodations. And then my friend Cindy West is offering a Nature Study Made Easy book that is available on her website. And then my friend Christy Faith is offering a fun ice cream unit study that's just like a fun deep dive into the history of ice cream and making it so you can bring some more fun into your homeschool. So altogether, there's like over $250 worth of pre-order bonuses just for getting the book ahead of time. So
that's awesome.
You can find, I know, it's super exciting. I was really grateful that they were willing to jump in and offer those really cool bonuses. And I got to look at them. They're super fun. I'm going to use them with my kids too. So you could do that, and you can find the book anywhere books are sold. My website is raisinglifelonglearners.com, and you'll see a big, check out the book on there. And then you can also check out homeschooladvantagebook.com. And that's going to direct you directly to the page about the book and the pre-order bonuses. So
awesome.
Yeah.
We love good bonuses. So that's going to be fabulous. And we'll make sure all of those links are in the show notes so you guys can go explore this wonderful book. Colleen, thank you so very much for joining us today. It was such a delightful conversation. And I am so excited for all of our listeners to get a chance to read this book. It's fabulous. Thank you.